Shalom everyone, and welcome back to the channel. The following is a presentation that I did at the Prophecy Vine Gospel Worth Dying for Sukkot this year in 2025. I pray that this teaching is a blessing to you all. Now let's go ahead and get right into it. I have 4 topics that I'd like to talk about in regards to the Zadok Priestly Calendar that we follow. One is the priestly courses. Are they a late concept? Tequfah, what is it? Does the Sabbath day ever change? And we'll be discussing the mysterious 7-day intercalation period. First on the agenda is the priestly courses, a late concept. We're going to take a look at some of the scriptures that reference the priestly courses so we can get an idea of what we're talking about and where they come from. In 1 Chronicles 24, the priests are called out by families by King David to serve in the house of Yahweh that Solomon will build. 2 Chronicles 8:14 says, "Now according to the ordinance of his father David, he appointed the divisions of the priests for their service, and the Levites for their duties of praise and ministering before the priest according to the daily rule." 2 Chronicles 31:2, "And Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests and the Levites by their divisions, each according to his service, both the priests and the Levites." Ezra 6:18 says, "And they set the priests in their divisions, and the Levites in their courses, for the service of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses." A companion book to Ezra is Nehemiah, and in Nehemiah chapter 12, verses 1 through 7, and verses 12 through 21, the priests and Levites are mentioned there as well. And last, in Luke 1:5, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abijah." From 1 Chronicles 24, under the inspiration of the Ruach, King David names the priests. 2 Chronicles 8, King Solomon appoints the priests per King David's instructions. 2 Chronicles 31, Hezekiah reestablishes the divisions of the priests and Levites. This shows the system was still in use centuries after David and Solomon. Ezra 6, after the Babylonian exile, the returning exiles reinstituted the priestly divisions. And Nehemiah is a second witness to the reinstitution. And Luke 1, this New Testament reference, confirms the system was still active during the time of Messiah, showing us that these priestly courses were instituted and then followed for a very, very long time. Now, all those verses are great for the temple, but what about the tabernacle? What system did they use before King David named the priestly courses? If we dig into the scriptures, we'll find that Numbers chapter 3 tells us about the establishment of the Levites and their duties for the service of the tabernacle. Numbers 3, 5 through 7 says, "Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Bring the tribe of Levi near, and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge, and the charge of the whole congregation, before the tabernacle of the congregation, to do the service of the tabernacle." We have an interesting word here in this verse. Look at where it says, "And they shall keep his charge, and the charge of the whole congregation." This is a word that we need to dissect. Let's find out, what does this word charge mean? The word charge comes from the Hebrew word Mishmarot. It is a guard, function, obligation, service, or watch. So you can picture a guard who circles around the perimeter of a facility over and over, meticulously observing and checking a list to ensure things are in order. And the word Mishmarot is the singular form of the word Mishmarot. The term Mishmarot, referring to the weekly priestly courses or temple watches, appears in several Dead Sea Scrolls, notably 4Q 325, Mishmarot D, 4Q 326, 4Q 322 through 324b, Mishmarot C, 4Q 320, and 4Q 321. Coming back to our text, in Numbers chapter 3, we have three families that are named and their duties are specified. Number 1, Kohath of the Kohathites. They carried the sacred objects such as the ark and the menorah. Number 2, Gershon of the Gershonites managed the curtains and the coverings. And number 3, Merari of the Merarites. They handled the structural components such as the frames and the bases. Another verse to support their institution would be Numbers 4:17 that says, "Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, Do not let the tribe of the families of the Kohathites be cut off from among the Levites, but do this to them that they may live and not die when they approach the most set-apart objects. Aaron and his sons shall go in and assign each of them to his work and to his load." Emphasis being on the word assign right there. So what I hope I've laid out for you is that all the way back in Numbers chapter 3, we have a structured service and ordered duties of the priests and the Levites. In Numbers 4:17, they have assignments. We have three families being named, and they are giving the charge or the Mishmarot duties of the tabernacle services. I want to bring us back to Ezra 6:18 because I think there's something that we've all read over and just didn't even pay attention to. And that is, "And they set the priests in their divisions and the Levites in their courses for the service of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses." What? This can only be speaking of the designations of the priests and the Levites from the book of Numbers. Their charge, assignments, and duties were structured and orderly. The Creator's tabernacle could not and would not have run without the divine order aligned to the calendar schedule. This would have been an earlier, more primitive form of the Mishmarot, priestly calendar found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the priestly courses, are they a late concept? Given all of the evidence that we just went over, the answer is an astounding no. Moving on to our next subject in the agenda is Tequfah. What is it? In the Hebrew scriptures, the word Tequfah appears 4 times. Strong's H8622 means coming round, circuit of time or space, a turning, circuit, and as an adverb, at the circuit. Now let's find the scriptures and read where the word Tequfah appears. Exodus 34:22, "You shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks, that is, the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year." 1 Samuel 1:20, "It came about in due time, after Hannah had conceived, that she gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel." 2 Chronicles 24:23, "Now it happened at the turn of the year that the army of the Arameans came up against him, and they came to Judah and Jerusalem." Psalm 19:6, "Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat." We can see here that the word Tequfah has many uses. Some might say, but I thought Tequfah means equinox. The answer to that is no. Tequfah does not mean equinox or solstice. The Hebrew word Tequfah, meaning circuit or turning point, did not originally mean equinox in the Hebrew Bible. In its earliest appearances in Exodus 34:22 and 2 Chronicles 24:23, it referred more generally to the turn of the year or a seasonal transition without specifying astronomical events like equinoxes or solstices. Let's take a look at 1 Samuel 1:20, where the word Tequfah is used, and prove that Tequfah does not mean equinox or solstice here. So it came about in due time, after Hannah had conceived, that she gave birth to a son. And the word in due right there is the word Tequfah. This is clearly talking about the gestation period of a woman's pregnancy. Even that could have 3 Tequfahs or cycles. In the first trimester, or months 1 through 3, whenever that is completed, you could say Tequfah. And the second trimester, months 4 through 6, once that is completed, you could say Tequfah. And then in the third trimester, months 7 through 9, you could also say Tequfah, and it would be 3 complete cycles of the gestation period. And now the question becomes, when did the word Tequfah begin being used to describe the equinox and by who? With a little bit of research, I found that the association of Tequfah with the equinoxes and solstices emerged in post-biblical Jewish literature, particularly in the Talmudic period, roughly the 3rd to 6th centuries CE. One of the earliest known figures to formalize this usage was Samuel of Nehardea, a Babylonian sage. He defined the 4 Tequfot as the seasonal turning points, each marking a 91-day quarter of the year. And here below, you can easily identify the Babylonian influence. This system became embedded in rabbinic tradition, where Tequfah came to denote the astronomical start of each season, aligning with the sun's position in the zodiac. The Talmud even includes blessings for witnessing the sun at its Tequfah, its turning point in the sky. So, while Tequfah evolved to mean equinox or solstice in later Jewish thought, that meaning is not present in the biblical text itself. It's a later interpretive development rooted in rabbinic astronomy and calendrical precision. Now we're going to look at where Tequfah appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is 4Q 324D, column 1. Here in line 3, it's giving the explanation for how to begin the year. This is actually the end of the 12th month and the beginning of the first. So line 3 reads, the beginning of the first month on weekday 4, Tequfah, on the 4th in it, Shabbat, on the 11th in it, Shabbat, and so on. Here is 4Q 324D, column 2, line 8, and this is the end of the 3rd month, beginning of the 4th month. So we'll read from 7 where it says, weekday 3 is additional, Vakat. The beginning of the 4th month is on weekday 4, Tequfah. On the 4th in it, Shabbat. On the 11th in it, Shabbat, and so on. This is 4Q 324D, column 3. Line 9 is where we see Tequfah, and this is the end of the 6th month, beginning of the 7th. We'll start reading in between 8 and 9. It says the beginning of the 7th month is on weekday 4, Tequfah. On the 4th in it, the 7th month, Shabbat. On the 10th in it, the Day of Atonement, and so on. And last we have 4Q 324D, column 4, line 9 is where Tequfah appears, and this is for the end of the 9th, beginning of the 10th. We'll read from line 9. Weekday 3 is additional on the first day of the 10th month, Tequfah. On weekday 4, on the 4th in it, Shabbat on the 11th. Here on the left side of the screen, I've pulled out all of the texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have highlighted the weekly Shabbat and the feast Shabbats, and we'll begin reading them and highlighting the Zadok Priestly Calendar basic outline here on the right. All right, from the top. The beginning of the 1st month on weekday 4, Tequfah. On the 4th in it, Shabbat. On the 11th in it, Shabbat. On the 14th in it, the Passover, weekday 3. On the 15th in it, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, weekday 4. On the 18th in it, Shabbat. On the 25th in it, Shabbat. The waving of the sheaf is on the 26th in it, after the Shabbat. Weekday 5 in it falls the 30th day of the month. The beginning of the 2nd month is on weekday 6. On the 2nd in it, Shabbat. On the 9th in it, Shabbat. On the 16th in it, weekday 3 is additional, Vakat. The beginning of the 4th month is on weekday 4, Tequfah. On the 4th in it, Shabbat. On the 11th in it, Shabbat. On the 18th in it, Shabbat. On the 25th in it, Shabbat. Weekday 5 in it falls the 30th day of the month. What we're seeing here is a Sabbath and feast schedule. The Zadok Priestly Calendar year has 4 seasons comprised of 13 weeks or 91 days. So, at the end or beginning of each of the 4 seasons, the sons of Zadok would add the word Tequfah. In this context, they're simply saying cycle, kind of like the example of the pregnancy gestation period. You could say Tequfah after each trimester. Here, they're saying Tequfah after every season. Next up on the agenda is, has the Sabbath ever changed? And what I'm meaning here is not like the way that Catholicism has changed the Sabbath over to Sunday, but does the Sabbath shift and move based on the lunations of the moon or the cycles of the sun? To search for evidence on this subject, I went directly to the time of Messiah because he was definitely on the correct calendar. And there were many accusations and disputes that the Pharisees brought up regarding Sabbath violations, so let's take a look at them. In Matthew 12, Mark 2, and Luke 6, the Pharisees accuse Yahushua's disciples of unlawful behavior because they were plucking grain. In Matthew 12, Mark 3, and Luke 6, again, Yahushua heals in the synagogue on the Shabbat, and the Pharisees plot to destroy him. Luke 13, Yahushua heals a woman bent over for 18 years, and the synagogue leaders protest. Luke 14, Yahushua challenges the Pharisees, is it lawful to heal on the Shabbat? John 5, Yahushua heals a man and tells him to carry his mat. The Jews accuse him of breaking the Shabbat. In John 9, Yahushua heals using clay. The Pharisees say he is not from Elohim because he does not keep the Sabbath. Why not just stone him for observing the Shabbat on the wrong day? You see, if Yahushua and his family were solar Sabbatarians or lunar Sabbatarians, whose Shabbats and feasts floated around each year to align with the vernal equinox or moon phases, wouldn't it have been much easier to stone them for working on the Shabbat? Per the Torah, they would have had legal authority to do so. Remember in Numbers 15:32-35, we'll read, "Now, while the sons of Yasharel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moshe and Aaron and to all the congregation, and they put him in custody because it had not been declared what should be done to him. Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, 'The man shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp.'" This is proof that Yahusha and the Pharisees kept the same 7-day weekly cycle and the same Shabbat. Did you know that Rome protected the Sabbath? This one was a surprising find for me because I've always thought and been taught that part of Rome's persecution of Yasharel was forcing them to observe a calendar other than their own. But the evidence that I found has obliterated that narrative. Rome ratifies a treaty with the Jews after the Maccabees defeat the Seleucids and recognize their sovereignty. Historical sources indicate that the first Jewish settlers arrived in Rome around 161 BCE, immediately following the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes. The treaty from 161 BCE between the Jews and Rome is preserved in textual form through historical sources like 1st Maccabees and Josephus, and references in later medieval guidebooks indicate that a physical bronze tablet may have existed historically. However, no extant physical copy has survived to the present day. The preservation is therefore indirect. The textual and literary record serves as the primary evidence for the treaty's content and existence. The first well-known ruler to show special favor to the Jewish people was Julius Caesar, about 46 BC. Other decrees protecting the practice of their faith were continued by later emperors and continued into the later imperial period by Constantine, Theodosius II, and Justinian. Josephus, in his work Antiquity of the Jews, says that Julius Caesar was favorable toward the Jewish people. He then gives a series of decrees issued by various cities that confirmed their rights to worship Elohim and keep the Shabbat. Here we find the Edict of Augustus on Jewish rights from approximately 1 BC, and we'll read it from the top. "Caesar Augustus, Pontifex Maximus, and Tribune of the people, ordains thus: Since the nation of the Jews has been found friendly to the Roman people, not only at this time, but in time past also, and especially Hyrcanus, the high priest, under my father, Caesar the emperor, it has seemed good to me and my council, according to the wish and oath of the people of Rome, that the Jews should have liberty to follow their own customs, according to the law of their forefathers, as they did under Hyrcanus, the high priest of Almighty Elohim, and that their sacred money be not touched, but be sent to Jerusalem, and that it be committed to the care of the receivers at Jerusalem, and that they be not obligated to appear in court either on the Sabbath day or on the day of preparation before it, after the 9th hour. And if anyone be caught stealing their holy books or their sacred money, whether it be out of the synagogue or from the men's apartments, he shall be deemed a sacrilegious person, and his goods shall be confiscated to the public treasury of the Romans. And I give order that the decree which they have given me, on account of the piety which I exercise to all mankind, and out of regard of Caius Marcus Censorinus, and the present edict, be put up in the most eminent place consecrated to me by the community of Asia and Syria. And if any one transgresses any part what is above decreed, he shall be severely punished. This was inscribed upon a pillar in the temple of Caesar Augustus. The Edict of Claudius on Jewish rights from about 41 CE reads, Claudius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, Pontifex Maximus, tribune of the people, chosen council the second time, ordains as follows. Upon the petition of King Agrippa and King Herod, who are persons very dear to me, that I would grant the same rights and privileges to be preserved to the Jews throughout all the Roman Empire, as I have granted to the Jews of Alexandria, I very willingly comply therewith, not only to gratify my petitioners, but also judging those Jews for whom I have been petitioned worthy of such a favor, on account of their fidelity and friendship to the Romans. I think it also very just that no Greek city should be deprived of such rights and privileges, since they were preserved to them under the great Augustus. It is therefore right to permit the Jews throughout all our empire to keep their ancient customs without let or hindrance. And I do charge them also to use this my kindness to them with moderation, and not to show contempt at the superstitious observances of other nations, but to observe their own laws only. And I will that the rulers of cities and colonies and municipal towns, both within and without Italy, and king and governors by their ambassadors, post up this decree publicly for full 30 days in a place where it may be plainly read from the ground. Contrary to popular opinion, Constantine also protected Sabbath observance. In the correct translation of the Life of Constantine, Book 4, Chapter 18, Section 2, we learn, accordingly, he enjoined on all his subjects of the Roman Empire to observe the Lord's Day as a day of rest, and also to honor the Sabbath, in memory, I suppose, of what the Savior of all mankind is recorded to have achieved on that day. Cameron and Hall, page 159. To learn more about Constantine's Sabbath protections, see Appendix B in the back. Here is the translation provided by Stewart and Hall of the Life of Constantine, 4.18.2. The Blessed One urged all men also to do the same, as if by encouraging this, he might gently bring all men to piety. He therefore decreed that all those under Roman government should rest on the days named after the Savior, and similarly that they should honor the days of the Sabbath, in memory, I suppose, of the things recorded as done by the universal Savior on those days. The accurate translation of this section conveys that Constantine provided protection for Sabbath observance. This refers to the seventh day of the week. The Code of Justinian was composed in the 520s to 530s AD under the reign of the Roman Emperor Justinian. In it, we find CT 16.8.20 repeated as 1.9.13, which means that he allowed the same protections as earlier emperors. The Sabbath was protected by Roman rulers as early as Julius Caesar. This custom was retained by most other emperors until at least Justinian. While these laws specifically grant privileges to Jewish people, these same laws would have been extended to Christians as well. I made the decision to focus some study in this era due to all of the confusion and bad teachings about the calendar changes of this time span. Even though the nations were imposing their military might over Yasharel and installing their own puppet leaders, they still protected Yasharel's right to be sovereign and keep the Shabbat on their own calendar. The 7-day cycle from creation has been established and protected. Did you know that there are animals that even keep the Sabbath? That's right. We have Sabbath-keeping bees, Sabbath-keeping beavers, and birds that keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath-keeping bees were observed by Dr. Sang Lee, and they were in the Amazon rainforest. The bees remained resting even after the hive was opened, except for a few. And these bees were stingless, which kind of had me wondering, could they have been a remnant of the bees from the Garden of Eden? Next, the beavers. They were observed for 16 years, and it was found that these beavers always rested on the seventh-day Sabbath. And last, the birds. These were studied for 18 years, and these were migratory birds, and it was found that they also always rested on the seventh-day Sabbath. The 7-day weekly cycle was established in the beginning. There is absolutely zero evidence that it has ever changed to a different numerical day in the weekly 7-day count. And there is absolutely zero evidence that it is aligned to the lunar or solar cycle. So, to the question, has the Sabbath ever changed? It's an astonishing no. And now, the last topic on the agenda is the 7-day intercalation week. But before we talk about intercalation, we need to talk about the sacred number 7 in the scriptures. The number 7 occurs close to 400 times. 7 symbolizes divine completion and perfection, often seen as Yahuwah's number. The creation week, culminating in the Sabbath on the 7th day, see Genesis 2:2-3, sets a pattern for divine completeness. The book of Revelation is replete with sevens, including 7 churches, 7 seals, and 7 trumpets, each symbolizing fullness and divine orchestration. The Creator's calendar is divisible by 7. So as you can see, the number 7 is a very important number to the Creator. I also want to introduce you to one of the songs of the Sabbath sacrifice. This was some of the liturgy that the sons of Zadok had, and it's been a real blessing to me as I read them and study, and they'll bless you as well. The songs of the Sabbath sacrifice contain angelic praise of Elohim assigned to the first 13 Sabbaths. They imply the simultaneous heavenly and earthly worship between the priesthoods. The poems depict the celestial sanctuary, the throne chariot, and the various groups participating in the angelic liturgy. They also include the words of the benediction sung by the 7 archangels. This is a psalm sung by the angels up in the Shamayim in Yahuwah's temple. As you can see, it's really going to iterate how important this number 7 is. So from the top, to the eternal Elohim, with its 7 wonderful blessings, he will bless the King of all the eternal Kadosh ones 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful blessing. Psalm of magnification, on the tongue of the second, to the King of truth and righteousness, with its 7 wonderful songs of magnification. He will magnify the Elohim of all the Elohim, who are appointed for righteousness 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful magnifications. Psalm of exaltation, on the tongue of the third of the chief princes, an exaltation of his truth, to the King of angels, with its 7 wonderful exaltations. He will exalt the Elohim of the exalted angels 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful exaltations. Psalm of praise, on the tongue of the fourth, to the powerful one who is above all the Elohim, with its 7 wonderful powers. He will praise the Elohim of powers 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful praise. Psalm of thanksgiving, on the tongue of the fifth, to the King of glory, with its 7 wonderful thanksgivings. They will give thanks to the Elohim of glory 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful thanksgivings. Psalm of exaltation, on the tongue of the sixth, to the Elohim of goodness, with its 7 wonderful exaltations. He will exalt in the King of goodness 7 times, with 7 words of wonderful exaltation. Psalm of singing, on the tongue of the 7th of the chief princes, a powerful song to the Elohim of Kadosh, with its 7 wonderful songs. He will sing to the King of Kadosh 7 times, with 7 wonderful words of songs. 7 psalms of his blessings, 7 psalms of magnification of his justice, 7 psalms of exaltation of his kingdom, 7 psalms of praise of his glory. 7 psalms of thanksgiving for his wonders, 7 psalms of exultation in his strength, 7 psalms of songs of the Kadosh, the generations of the exalted chiefs, 7 times with 7 wonderful words. Of the chief princes will bless in the glorious name of Elohim, all the powerful of intellect with 7 wonderful words to bless all their counsels in the Kadosh temple with 7 wonderful words, and to bless with them those who know eternal things. And another 7 that we need to talk about are the 7 days of consecration for the earthly priesthood and the tabernacle/temple. From Exodus 29:35 through 37, we read, "Thus you shall do to Aaron and to his sons, according to all that I have commanded you. You shall ordain them through 7 days. Each day you shall offer a bull as a sin offering for atonement. And you shall purify the altar when you make atonement for it, and you shall anoint it to consecrate it. For 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and consecrate it. Then the altar shall be most kadosh, and whatever touches the altar shall be kadosh." And Leviticus 8:33 through 35, "You shall not go outside the doorway of the tent of meeting for 7 days, until the day that the period of your ordination is fulfilled, for he will ordain you through 7 days. Yahuwah has commanded to do as has been done this day, to make atonement on your behalf at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Moreover, you shall remain day and night for 7 days, and keep the charge of Yahuwah, so that you will not die, for so I have been commanded." And from 2 Chronicles 29:16 through 18, we find that during King Hezekiah's reign, he called in a consecration of the priests and the temple after the previous king abandoned Yahuwah's ways and began worshiping idols. So the priest went into the inner part of the house of Yahuwah to cleanse it, and every unclean thing which they found in the temple of Yahuwah they brought out to the court of the house of Yahuwah. Then the Levites received it to carry it out to the Kidron Valley. Now they began the consecration on the 1st day of the 1st month, and on the 8th day of the month they entered the porch of Yahuwah. Then they consecrated the house of Yahuwah in 8 days, and finished on the 16th day of the 1st month. Then they went into King Hezekiah and said, "We have cleansed the whole house of Yahuwah, the altar of burnt offering with all of its utensils, and the table of showbread with all of its utensils." And also a 7-day consecration is found in Ezekiel 43:25 through 27. "For 7 days you shall prepare daily a goat for a sin offering, also a young bull and a ram from the flock, without blemish, shall be prepared. For 7 days they shall make atonement for the altar and purify it, so shall they consecrate it. When they have completed the days, it shall be that on the 8th day and onward, the priest shall offer your burnt offerings on the altar, and your peace offerings, and I will accept you, declares Yahuwah Elohim." That gives us this interesting time period of 7 days for the priesthood, 7 days for the tabernacle, and on the 8th day, services at the tabernacle are to begin. It's like a 7-day pause or reset for the temple and priests. I believe this would have been the time for the intercalation period. After every 6th year of the Mishmarot cycles, there would need to be 7 days added but not counted to catch up with the solar cycle. I believe I've found a scriptural and historical record of the 7 days added at the end of a Mishmarot cycle and at the consecration of the temple. This study kept bringing me back to Ezra chapter 6, so I'm going to add in a few more verses that I left out so you can see the full picture here. Ezra chapter 6, verse 15 through 20. "This temple was completed on the 3rd day of the month Adar. It was the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. And the sons of Yasharel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the exiles celebrated the dedication of this house of Elohim with joy. they offered for the dedication of this temple of Elohim 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and as a sin offering for all Yasharel, 12 male goats, corresponding to the number of the tribes of Yasharel. Then they appointed the priests to their divisions and the Levites in their courses for the service of Elohim in Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moshe. The exiles observed the Passover on the 14th of the first month, for the priests and the Levites had purified themselves together. All of them were pure. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the exiles, both for their brothers, the priests, and for themselves. Just a couple of facts that we can pull out from reading this text is that this temple was completed really close to the head of the year, and there was a 7-day consecration at some point before the temple was in service. And something else that stuck out was the date given at the beginning of verse 15 was pretty specific, so I decided to go and look this date up. I simply typed in, when would the 3rd of Adar 515 BCE have been, into a search engine, and this was the first date that it gave me. I did, however, use a few different search engines to see what they would find, and I got slightly different dates, but all still in March around the head of the year. So I went ahead and ran with the first one. And then it dawned on me that we intercalated this year in 2025 on that same date. All right, let's see what this looks like when we put 515 BCE and 2025 together. Then we start our 7 days of intercalation / consecration on day 4, March 12th. That gets us to day 4, March 19th as the head of the year. One thing to follow up on and check is this the end of a 6-year cycle of the Mishmarot, where we propose the 7 days of intercalation belong? Like you've already learned from our previous calendar teachings, we anchored the start of the new Jubilee and Shemitah cycle to 2019. So if we simply run this cycle back to 515 BCE, here's where we find ourselves. I'm going to start with Gamul here in 520 and count out the Mishmarot cycle from year 1, the next year's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 gets us right here at the year 515 BCE. So what we have here are several conjunctions. We have the historical scriptural alignment with the Mishmarot cycle. Ezra 6 tells us that there was a consecration at this time, and it lines up with the year 6 in the Mishmarot cycle, which is where the intercalation would conclude that year and begin the first year. But let's take it another step even further back to see if there's any more alignments. In the book of Jubilees 48:1, we learn that Moshe returned to Egypt in the 2nd week in the 2nd year in the 50th Jubilee. So this is the first week of years, 1 through 7. This is the 2nd week of years, 8 through 14. And this is the 2nd year of the 2nd week of the 50th Jubilee. Now, this is the year when the Exodus began, and they made the journey to Mount Sinai. And here would have been the 1st year in the wilderness, and this would have been the 2nd year in the wilderness. What we see here is the tabernacle was erected and in service in the 1st year of the Mishmarot cycle with Gamul, which again means that a 7-day consecration / intercalation was due because it was the end of the 6th year and beginning of the 1st year. And Exodus 29:35 tells us that there was a 7-day ordination for Aaron and his sons before Exodus 40:17, the erection of the first tabernacle. So once again, this is another amazing find proving the importance of the Mishmarot cycle. Also, something else that I found is that Moshe returns to Egypt in the week of Shechaniah. The name Shechaniah means Yahuwah dwells in him, Quite the coincidence, right? And to conclude the presentation, I'll give a final recap. Here are the 4 talking points that we began with. The priestly courses, a late concept, and the answer was a no. Tequfah, what is it? Cycle or circuit, depending on how you're using it. Does the Sabbath day ever change? We've proven that to be a definitive no. And the mysterious 7-day intercalation. I believe that I've demonstrated proof of its existence and when it occurs. I pray this presentation has blessed you, and I give all the praise to Yahuwah. I also pray that I see you next year at the campfire chat at Sukkot.